From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast is Andre Johnson.
Junior.
Do not forget the Junior is very important to remember the JR at the end of the name. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, share, rate, review. If you are watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. Also, hello to the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. If you found us here, we're glad you're here. So thank you for watching. And we are here quite often, so continue to watch as you get prepped for your day on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Or maybe you wind down your day with the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. It doesn't matter. We're still going to be here. It is Friday, nice Friday morning as we move into what has been known as the best weekend of the NFL, divisional round of the playoffs. The Elite Eight, if you will, are left. And I'm sure you'll be watching. I'll be watching. Absolutely. And we'll be having some discussions about that on Monday. But for today, we're going to talk about a topic that I know you guys have a lot of passion about. And it was a topic that was sort of reopened after Mickey Loomis's press conference. We'll get to that in a second. First off, Friday, how you feeling on this Friday?
I'm feeling good, Sean. I'm trying to get to Saturday, Sunday, because you mentioned those playoff games, and we've got some bangers this weekend. Bills-Ravens, the one I really
That's going to be the one.
Because whoever wins that might wind up in New Orleans for the Super Bowl.
You know, we were talking about that on the Game Plan show. Doesn't it feel like Lions-Bills is the dream matchup for New Orleans? It just feels like that's the one everyone's kind of looking towards with those fan bases, those organizations. I just feel like New Orleans Saints and Saints fans kind of connect to those fan bases, suffering fan bases. And anyway, I just think it's going to be fun to watch.
Have the tables here to accommodate the Buffalo fans.
Bills Mafia, baby.
Yeah, they're going to have to bring their own tables. I don't know if we have enough here.
Let me tell you something, though. It's going to be very hard for the Bills to beat the Ravens because the Ravens are playing awesome right now. So anyway, we'll get to that on another day because when Super Bowl coverage gets here, trust me, we're going to be all in. No doubt about it. All right. So, Andre, I wanted to go with the big picture today. Mickey Loomis had his end-of-year press conference, and we talked about this Monday was one of the takeaways. The door was left open at quarterback. The door was left open at options at quarterback. The door was left open for the new head coach to come in and say, I feel really strongly about option A, option B, or option C. We're going to break down those options today because Mickey Loomis had a chance to say, look, Derek Carr's under contract. He is going to be our starting quarterback in 2025, and he did not do that. He was asked multiple times. He was praised. He obviously praised the work of Derek Carr and Spencer Rattler and even Jake Haener, but he was non-committal because he does not want to pigeonhole his new head coach or, restrict the pool of candidates for a new head coach based off of one player. Granted, it's a very important player, but obviously there's enough there to where they can go one direction with Carr, one direction without Carr, and we're going to break that down today with the big picture Saints quarterback options.
Right? We've got 3 possible options. We're going to do a quick multiple choice for you guys. Yeah. Option A, option B, option C, and let us know in the comments. It might be option D, none of the above. Let us know down below which one you like as we get into the 3 options the Saints have heading into the offseason. Starting, Sean, with option A, Derek Carr comes back on a restructured deal and leads the Saints in 2025.
So basically status quo. Derek Carr returns to the Saints in 2025 on a restructured contract. It's very important to point out. He's not coming back on the same deal. It's going to be a restructured contract because if you make the choice for him to come back, his contract is the one that gives you the most flexibility against the cap. In other words, if you decide on Derek Carr coming back, you have to restructure him because that is a huge chunk in getting from $52 million. You can come all the way down to $29 million, I believe, if you look at if you do the math correctly, based off a big restructure of Derek Carr's contract. I have said, just when I crunch the numbers, you can do it the other way, and clearly Loomis understands you can do it the other way, but the pro of this is an established veteran who's had success in the NFL, probably could have more success, but since he's been in New Orleans, New Orleans Saints have not won a game without him. He is 14-13 as a starter, and he is a capable, competent starting quarterback and a veteran. Depending on who that head coach is, let's just throw a name out there like Mike McCarthy. Maybe he favors a veteran that he can count on and he can get to a level of installing an offense from a guy where you don't have to go all the way down to the beginner level courses based off of a certain offense. So I think it's still a very realistic opportunity, a very realistic option, or a very realistic thing that Derek Carr returns to the Saints in 2025 on a restructured contract. Now, what is the downside of that? Well, the downside is, and I've told you guys this guy was the model of durability forever with the Raiders. And now that he's been with the Saints, he's been knocked out of 3 games in 2023 and then missed 7 games in 2025. You just hope this is not the beginning of the end of that Iron Man durability that he enjoyed, because sometimes it happens. It just all of a sudden, that the body of work where you just were able to fend off all those injuries, it just starts to break down as it's the beginning of the end. That is a risk, obviously. And also this, because you would have to restructure Derek Carr, you would also be adding dead money in 2026, which makes it more expensive to move on from him in 2026. So while you get the cap relief present day in 2025, it would make it more expensive in 2026. It's just a matter of organizationally, do we think he can help us win, or do we think we're turning the page and want to get to the next franchise quarterback or a franchise quarterback? That really is up to the head coach and how they mesh and blend with the front office and the brain trust, making the moves, making the decisions. But I think all in all, you can't close the door on this option. In fact, I still think not as strongly as I once did based off of Mickey Loomis's comments, but I still think this is probably the most likely option.
Yeah, for me, when I think about bringing Derek Carr back on a restructured deal, it seems like you're kind of buying time. Mm-hmm. It's you saying, we don't like any of the quarterbacks in this upcoming class, or we don't think we're going to be in a position to draft a guy that maybe we do like. And it's going to put one thing to the test. It's going to put to the test how much injuries really affected the 2024 season. Because if you bring back Derek Carr, you're going to have Alvin Kamara back. Hopefully you'll have Taysom Hill, Olave, Shaheed. A lot of the guys on offense from this past season will be back. I don't know how you could possibly be more injured than you were in 2024. So you'd like to think they'd be more healthy in 2025. So it's essentially you saying, hey, we think we struck gold on those first 2 weeks. We feel like this team has a chance to compete, especially in the NFC South, where about 9 wins will make the playoffs for you. Let's run it back with the group we had last year. Let's stay healthy, and we think we can do it. Now, you mentioned Mike McCarthy. I think this whole conversation is based off of the coach that you hired.
There's no doubt.
If you bring in a Joe Brady, if you bring in an Aaron Glenn, if you bring in a Cliff Kingsbury, they may not be locked into having a veteran quarterback like Derek Carr on the roster.
Exactly.
But if you bring in a Mike McCarthy or another name we've talked about, a John Gruden, both of those guys may say, hey, I think I got a better chance winning with Derek Carr right now than I do anybody else. And they choose to keep Derek Carr. But the problem is, like you said, if you choose to lighten the blow for 2025, you're hurting yourself beyond 2025 and 2026. And that's the major downside to this, because if you're going to start a rebuild, you can't keep doing the same things that got you to this point.
Well, you have no choice this year. You're either restructuring Derek Carr or you're restructuring 10 others. It's just that's just the way the math works out. And they did this with the assumption that the cap will go up. It should also be pointed out we don't know what the salary cap number is going to be. So they may have a little bit more cap space than perhaps we are anticipating or estimating right now. But I don't know that it's going to be a huge enough jump to where it's going to offset a lot of other moves. That is the risk. You should also add this. This is kind of status quo, right? Derek Carr comes back. Spencer Rattler's back. Maybe you move on from Haener. Maybe Haener's back, or at least he's back for training camp. You still could, theoretically, in this scenario, draft a guy. You could still draft a guy and have that person be the new coach's kind of young project and go forward. And Derek Carr is the guy leading the way until that young quarterback is ready, depending on when you draft that quarterback.
That's true, and that is an option. But if the Saints were going to go that way, I'd like to see them draft a quarterback high, which is something we'll get to later in this episode as another one of the options. But I'm sick of the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th round quarterbacks, the Garrett Graysons, the Ian Books, the Jake Haeners, the Spencer Rattlers, the guys who you're drafting to be backups, and they get here and they prove that they're exactly that. If even that, which is a backup quarterback. None of those guys have stuck and been able to have any level of consistent success as the starter leading this team. So I'd like a guy that they would draft early and say, hey, this is our guy. Now, if you're able to do that this year, you've got some options in the draft, maybe a Quinn Ewers or somebody like that if the Saints like him. And we'll get there. But I think Derek Carr would be a good bridge, a good veteran to a talented quarterback.
All right, what's option 2?
Option 2 is the option that a lot of our viewers, I'm sure, would like. You got to let Derek Carr walk, and you go into 2025 with Spencer Rattler or a veteran quarterback. So you bring back Rattler, obviously, and you've got a veteran quarterback that you sign into free agency.
To me, if you go this direction, it's Spencer Rattler and a veteran quarterback. Not or, because...
Or as in one of them has to start.
Right.
But yeah, those two are going to battle in training.
Because I think there's a thought process out there that to me is not smart. I'm not saying I'm not going to completely discount it, but to me it's not a very smart move. If this were the vision for whoever this head coaching candidate is and ultimately gets the job, if the vision were we're good with Spencer Rattler, let's move on from Derek Carr, let's just roll the ball out, let's just hand the next 17 games of 2025 season Spencer Rattler. That's the wrong approach. To me, I would have no problem with Spencer Rattler starting games if they felt strongly about him, as long as you brought in a veteran player, whether that's a guy trying to revive his career, whether that's one of those kind of spot starter, high-end backup types. You got to have that person with Spencer Rattler. And I honestly think you would let those two players compete it out and see who ultimately could win that competition out, because I have a hard time believing a head coaching candidate would come in and say Spencer Rattler is the franchise for a rookie that basically went 0-7. Not all his fault, obviously, but I just don't think a new head coach is going to have that vision. If they had that vision, they're probably looking more towards 2026 and the 2026 draft. Now, who are the veteran options at free agency? They got quite a few. Now, to me, if you're a new head coach, I don't think a new head coach is going to come in with the idea of I'm okay with losing. I think they still want to win games. Tanking is just not something, it's in the DNA of coaches and players in the NFL. So who would be the viable options? I know a lot of y'all probably like Justin Fields. I would have no problem with Justin Fields, 26 years old. He's the most athletic of the group. Next one on my list, look, this year's version of Sam Darnold, well, it could be next year's version of Sam Darnold. Maybe he's available, but I think he's going to be a little too expensive, probably going to cash in with a Baker Mayfield, Derek Carr type contract somewhere. But you can't completely rule out that option, especially with J.J. McCarthy. Maybe they run it back in Minnesota. But I think Sam Darnold, I guess, would be a free agent option. And the other one that is probably going to get a lot of y'all to gag a little bit, or because he had such a tough career in New York, it would be Daniel Jones, 28 years old, a guy that's won a playoff game, led a team to a playoff game, 2 playoff games, won 1, lost 1. It's been a disaster, especially the way it finished in New York. He's a guy that came into New Orleans and won a game, and man, I'd have to go back and really check, but I am almost positive that the Saints were high on him when he was coming out. He was a guy that they actually liked and they actually looked at. So those would be my 3. Justin Fields. Sam Darnold feels a little unrealistic, doesn't it? Yeah. And then Daniel Jones. And then you go to the next tier, which is like Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, Mason Rudolph, Drew Lock. I mean, and there's always going to be 1 or 2 that get cut that you could look at. But that to me, would be the option. The pro of that is Derek Carr comes off your books. And you got fresh blood at the quarterback position. I don't know if you're better. I don't know if you're worse, which could be a con, because you're walking away from an established guy that's won a lot of football games for you over the last couple of years, to someone who has literally never won a football game in the NFL, and another veteran quarterback that has never won a game in a Saints uniform. So that would be the comp. But you also would save that money, you wouldn't save money because you have to restructure a bunch of contracts outside of Derek Carr, but you'll get that contract off the books, so in 2026 you're scot-free.
Yeah, and I think this option is all about 2026, because it's going to feel nasty in the moment. I think that no matter which quarterback you bring in, you're going to lose a lot of games and you're going to be in the conversation for the number 1 overall pick because we've seen Rattler, and yes, he was dealing with injuries. Yes, he was rookie, but like you said, he essentially went 0-7. You bring Sam Darnold here.
0-6, yeah.
Yeah, 0-6.
Yeah.
You know, you bring Sam Darnold here. There's no Justin Jefferson in New Orleans.
Right.
There's no Aaron Jones in New Orleans, although Alvin Kamara did just have a great season. There's no Jordan Addison. Like, the offensive line, the tight end situation over there, you don't have the talent offensively here that you have in Minnesota. I don't think Sam Darnold would be great here. I don't think he'd be better than Derek Carr here. And I know how a lot of Saints fans feel about Derek Carr. Maybe you go, hey, Mac Jones, you know, he took his lumps in New England. He learned a little bit behind Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. We give Mac Jones another chance. I don't think he's winning games here. Trey Lance hasn't been able to stick with anybody since he got drafted, 3rd overall? I don't think he's winning games here.
Yeah.
Cooper
Purdy beat him
Rush
out,
will be available. Maybe you say, hey, Cooper Rush showed us a lot in Dallas, you know, winning 4 games.
Well,
and
McCarthy comes around.
Yeah, you know, McCarthy comes in. Maybe he brings Cooper Rush with him, gives him a chance. But will he be better than Derek Carr was here? I don't think so. There's only one name that we've talked about that I think could stick, and that's Justin Fields. I've been very high on Justin Fields coming out of Ohio State. I think he got a raw deal in Chicago. I don't think that the coaching staff did a great job game planning around what he does well. In Pittsburgh, before Russell Wilson, the veteran, eventually took over that job, Justin Fields was winning games. Now, it wasn't always pretty, but Justin Fields was winning games. I think with the right coach around him, he'd be playing with Chris Olave, a guy he did play with at Ohio State, and they made magic up there. I think Justin Fields is a quarterback that might stick in New Orleans, and maybe, I know for sure he could beat out Spencer Rattler, but maybe you get Justin Fields here, you get a coaching staff that can bring the best out of him. You may not have to draft another quarterback because Justin Fields, in my opinion, is young and talented. But if you can't do that, you're playing the long game.
So to me, that Justin Fields would all depend on the head coach. And all this depends on the head coach because Mike McCarthy, I couldn't see a guy like that wanting a guy like Justin Fields, but I could see a Kingsbury.
Yeah, very similar to Jaden Daniels.
I could see maybe a Joe Brady.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I haven't put Kellen Moore in my top 4, but, you know, he's going to get interviewed, so he's someone that you have to take seriously. Maybe a Kellen Moore. That would depend mostly on the type of head coach that you would get. Yeah, so of that group, the best chance to win games would be, as long as Sam Darnold's off the board, it would be Justin Fields 1. I think you'd have to go Daniel Jones 2, right? Or maybe I don't know. I don't even know.
Daniel Jones. I'd take Cooper Rush before I took Daniel Jones. I take my chances in seeing if I can knock on the door and pull a Baker Mayfield with Mac Jones or Trey Lance before I took Daniel Jones.
Well, here's the other thing. Whoever this veteran is, it's a 1-year rental. Yeah. You know, it's a 1-year Sam Darnold rental where you come in.
Unless it's Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields might have the chance to stick around.
I don't think anybody's going to hand him like a 4-year, $150 million contract. I think it's all these guys on this list will probably be somewhere in the mix of a 1 or a 2-year contract with their next team. So we'll see. That's not a pretty.
It's the nastiest option on paper.
That's not a pretty
sure.
sight. All right, what's option 3?
But you're playing the long game. You're playing the 2026 and maybe getting one of those guys. And while we're talking about one of those guys in the draft, that leads me to option C or option 3, however you want to look at it. Letters, numbers. You look in the draft this April and you draft an early round quarterback. I'm not talking about 4, 5, 6 round. First round quarterback or second round quarterback at the latest, and you dub that guy the future of this team and the face of the franchise. How are we feeling about that one?
Well, that's certainly an option, and it's not something that I originally considered, and even kind of sounded like Loomis alluded to that too. You're picking at 9. Are you really going to be in a position to pick the top guys? He was clearly alluding to Ward and Sanders, but if a new head coach comes in and likes one of these guys, the draft process, I'm sure it's been ongoing, but then they get really into the draft process after they get the head coach, and maybe there's a different vision, and maybe there's a different skill set that emerges in a player that they like. I think we can effectively say, unless there's some drop by the top 2 guys, the top 2 guys are off the board.
Yeah, Sanders and Ward.
So you're picking at 9. So to me, this is either first or second round pick. I'm tired. I'm like you. I'm tired of the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round guys that just aren't going to pan out. More often than not, are not going to pan out. So who does that leave? Well, you've got Quinn Ewers out of Texas. You've got Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. Got a skill set. And then you got the guy that's been rising up the draft boards. I told you there was going to be one.
Yeah.
And probably has a little bit to do with the lack of quarterbacks in this draft, because next year is going to be bigger, but that's Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. I saw Mel Kiper moved him up to his third on his big board, or his quarterback rankings. I saw a mock the other day that had him eighth overall in the draft. That's a massive rise. But what I'm saying is, you can't rule that option out. The pro of that is whoever this new head coach would obviously have fallen in love with this player, so he thinks he's got his next franchise player. You still have Spencer Rattler. You still have Jay Kaner. Like I said, you probably wouldn't have all three of them. And even in that scenario, you're probably signing a veteran as well, because that is a really young quarterback room with Haener, Rattler, and whoever this unnamed quarterback is dubbed as the potential savior of the franchise. Because if you're drafting someone, especially in the first round at 9 overall, you're thinking that guy's got franchise material. Now, second round overall, you're thinking this guy's going to be maybe a competent starter, but maybe not the all-world elite quarterback. But still, second-round pick is a second-round pick on a quarterback. You can't discount that. That would be the pro of that. The con of that is a lot of unknowns at the quarterback position. And again, you're swinging and missing on a quarterback class that just does not look that deep. So if you're betting on one of these guys to be your next franchise, that's a major risk outside of the top 2, and it doesn't look like the top 2 will be available at 9.
Yeah, there's somebody probably listening to this podcast, maybe in the car, begging on the steering wheel, saying, Jalen Milroe's not a first-round pick. Jackson Dart's not a first-round pick. I'll throw another one in there. There's no way Dillon Gabriel's going in the first round. That's how this works when you're a quarterback. Quarterbacks get overdrafted all the time, whether it's right or wrong. I still believe J.J. McCarthy wasn't a first-round quarterback. Yeah. But because of the need,
I didn't think Bo Nix was going to be one.
Exactly. I didn't think Bo Nix should have been a first-round quarterback, and he got drafted by Sean Payton, and he's probably going to be the runner-up for Rookie of the Year. Yeah. So quarterbacks get overdrafted all the time. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you're Bo Nix. Sometimes you're Josh Rosen, you know? But that's just the nature of the game. But, yeah, when you look at those quarterbacks, assuming Shador and Cam Ward are gone, Ewers, Milroe, Dart, Dillon Gabriel. There's been a lot of talk about Ewers. He's had his ups, but he's had his downs too. Yeah. Jalen Milroe, I always joked based on how he plays LSU, if Jalen Milroe could play every game in the state of Louisiana, he'd be great. Yeah, I mean, he'd be playing in the Dome, but Jalen Milroe's a guy who would, you got a lot of work to do on Jalen Milroe, getting him to a professional skill set. Yeah. Jackson Dart, I think he's got a lot to learn. Dillon Gabriel, not as low on him as some other people are, but again, I don't think he's a first-round quarterback, although he probably goes that high.
Played a lot of college football.
He did. Now, the only thing I will say, if you go with this option, and this may be a hot take from me, I don't believe in sitting first-round quarterbacks unless you've got the guy, like that guy in front of him, unless you're Mahomes sitting behind Alex Smith, unless you're Aaron Rodgers sitting behind Brett Favre, Jordan Love sitting behind Aaron Rodgers. Unless you have that guy, like a top 10 level quarterback, I don't believe in sitting first-round quarterbacks. So if you're going to draft one of these guys, you should be ready to play them day one.
First round?
First round.
What if it's second round?
Even if it's second round, considering the options you have on this team right now, if Derek Carr was around, I'd say let him sit behind Carr as a bridge. But with no Derek Carr, I say start that guy, because I don't think you have any better options. And I've listened to quarterbacks drafted that high talk, one being Joe Burrow. Mm-hmm. Joe Burrow said, getting those keys from day one helped him so much, because then you get to take all of the reps with the ones. Mm-hmm. You're not doing as much watching, you're doing more playing. And I know a lot of people say, oh, you need to sit the guy, don't throw him in the fire, let him learn. I'm team throw him in the fire. Burrow was thrown in the fire, he came out stronger. C.J. Stroud thrown in the fire, he came out stronger. Bryce Young thrown in the fire. You had to take him out the fire real quick, but you threw him back in that oven, he's come out stronger.
See, it really depends on a guy. Like Mahomes is the best quarterback in the planet. He didn't play his rookie year. Aaron Rodgers sat 3 years. Jordan Love sat 3 years. So it really depends on the player, and really more than anything else, it was a situation. Like Mahomes had Alex Smith. That was a quality quarterback.
These are all guys with quality quarterbacks in front of them. But I mean, what are you sitting behind? Quarterback 19 in the league for when you could be playing? Like, there was no reason for Drake May to start the season sitting behind Jacoby Brissett.
Right. No, that's a great idea. I want to regroup for a second, because we laid a lot out there, and obviously in option 3, you're moving on from Derek Carr.
Yeah.
So they're not going to like me after this. You got option 1, which is restructure Derek Carr, and he's back, and you kind of have your same quarterback hierarchy, and maybe you invest a second-round pick on a quarterback, or not, whatever. And you still have Rattler, you still have Haener. Option 2, Carr's out. You turn the reins over to, and you're restructuring 10 other guys, a mountain of other guys, and you're turning the reins over to Spencer Rattler or a veteran to be named later. And the veterans could be Daniel Jones, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones. A weak veteran free agent class, let's put it that way. Or option 3, you draft your future franchise quarterback in a year where the quarterbacks, it's not a good quarterback class. Okay. Sorry, guys. I'm going with option 1. That's what I'm doing. I'm sorry. I'm restructuring Derek Carr. I'm bringing him back, and then I'm setting myself up for the next guy after Derek Carr. In the meantime, I'm going to be competent and confident and at least have a chance to be decent next season while at the same time looking ahead to the 2026 class. That's my pick.
I went back and forth between 1 and 2, and I landed at 2 because I think at some point you've got to rip this Band-Aid off. At some point you got to do something different. And when you rip a Band-Aid off of a wound, it hurts. It's going to hurt a lot. You're going to lose a lot. But after that wound heals, you're going to be back stronger. I think you got to move on. I would like to, even if they lose next season, I'm prepared for them to lose next season. You look at the roster, especially the quarterbacks that they would have in that situation. You lose next season, you come back in 2026, maybe with a Drew Allard, an Arch Manning, and you'd feel a lot better about that over the course of the next 10 years than if you wasted another 5 trying to keep doing the same things you've been doing.
Just because I think restructuring Carr might be the best option doesn't mean I think it's the most likely option.
Yeah.
I think option 2 is probably going to gain steam here over the next couple weeks and months. That's just the way it goes. It's just kind of the way the momentum goes sometimes. So, but first things first, I got to hire a coach. Next, we got to get out of here. For Andre Johnson Jr., I'm Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.